apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading to liberation, to be experienced individually by the wise. So reflect on this word dhamma, the refuge in dhamma. It's immediacy. It's not something you find in the future. It's not something you'll find in another place, but you have to go to India or Thailand to find it. Apparent here and now, santitiko, this immediacy of being awake now, timeless, akaliko. The Kali is a word that implies this time-bound conditions in the Hindu pantheon. Mother Kali is the black female of kind of that destroys what she gives birth to. Time takes away what it gives birth to. It consumes. So akala or akaliko is timeless. Outside of time. Ehipasiko, encouraging investigation. Ehipasiko is come and see. This sense of immediacy. Have a look right now. Don't put it off for next year. Ehipasiko, upanayiko, leading to liberation. Upanayika dhamma is this. When you investigate, go and see, you look, you awaken, it takes you to the realization of liberation. Bhajatang vetidapo vinyuhi, to be experienced individually by the wise. Ajahn Sumedho always say in Thai, it's bhajatang, which is, you take the word bhajatang in the Thai language, meaning you have to know it for yourself. It's not to be something given to you by a priest or God or any other external being. That's why when I keep trying to remind you that an attitude of I'm somebody, I'm the body, I'm somebody who was born, and I'm this body and I'm this personality, and there's something wrong with it, I have to do something to make it right. I'll practice meditation, and hopefully through practicing meditation hard enough, I will become awakened and become enlightened, or at least become somebody who I hope will be better than this wretched creature that I am right now. So there's no dhamma in that way of thinking, is there? That's not dhamma. That is just self-view. That's the avijja, the ignorance of the mind. because it's based on I am a condition. I am a man or a woman. I am American. I am good or bad, or there's always the conditioned realm is our identity, and then we are in kind of stuck into that role. Life then becomes that way for us. Whatever you attach to, whatever identities you fix on, you become like that. You become that way, the becoming process. Like if you think you're a hopeless person, you become a hopeless person. If you think you're a woman, then you become a woman. You become whatever you think you are. You become like that. And all that implies, the different qualities, good and bad. There's always all these conditions are limited, death-bound, unsatisfactory in themselves. As permanent identities, they'll always lead us to a sense of discontentment and despair. Eventually, it all takes us to despair. So the becoming process is based on this ignorance. I'm somebody, and I have to become. But when we see the Dhamma, then we're directly looking at that feeling or that attitude or that thought as anicca dukkha anatta, isn't it? We're aware of that as an object. I am somebody who has to do something to become something. And then you're seeing the Dhamma of it. The I am somebody becomes Dhamma rather than a position we take in life and become somebody. So that's why the refuge in Dhamma is apparent here and now, timeless. It's that immediate. It's not practicing with ignorance right now as somebody, as a person, and maintaining that ignorant position, hopefully becoming wise in the future. It's impossible. You can't be ignorant. By identifying with ignorance, you can't become wise. It's just impossible. Ajahn Sumedho used to often say things like we used to have these after the rainy season retreat, there are 3 months Vasa retreats in Thailand, and they have these katina ceremonies, offering of robe, cloth, and requisites to the different monasteries. So there's so many branch monasteries that Ajahn Chah had established in Thailand that we'd go through, sometimes one right after another, one katina ceremony after another. And then then you'd sit up all night, and monks would be invited to give talks. So, you'd hear monks would get up and they'd oftentimes get in a kind of haranguing modes, and some of the talks were quite, really. Sometimes we get a mic in somebody's hand and put them on a high seat, and really be quite an interesting event as far as somebody giving off opinions and telling you where it's at and what you should do and all that kind of business. So one day, I remember after one of these Katina ceremonies, I went over to where Ajahn Chah was resting, and he said, last night I listened to all those talks and I didn't hear any dhamma. And so I thought, they're supposed to be expounding the Dhamma. That's what they're supposed to be doing. The monks asked to expound the Dhamma. And then Luang Pa, Ajahn Chah's statement was, I didn't hear any Dhamma. And so this contemplated and just, with a lot of, even with monks or people at practice, there's still so much of the self-view influencing the way we speak. We often give forth opinions, or we criticize, or we kind of tell people what to do, intimidate them, and so forth. And it's very easy for a person in our position, people in a position of being some kind of priest or holy person, monk or nun, to have a kind of holier than thou attitude. Kind of, I'm a monk, let me tell you what to do. I'm celibate and I keep all these precepts, that I'm more pure than you are. But Dhamma then is, that's why the encouraging investigation, encouraging you to look at Dhamma, to contemplate Dhamma, rather than to form views and opinions about Buddhism, or about yourself. All these views and opinions about Buddhism and different, like Mahayana and Theravada, and then people have, form a prejudice or a biased position about it. And that is not Dhamma, is it? Unless we see that the actual opinion is a condition of the mind. So that's why we can, when we listen, say, to our opinions and views. Like one time I remember in Thailand having this insight about having opinions about Buddhism, because I can be very opinionated kind of person. So I'd have these very strong feelings, opinions about what is right and who's a good teacher and who isn't, and opinions about Christianity and other religions, and so that sometimes Western monks would get together and we'd have all these opinionating sessions. And then one day I remember I was in Bangkok even. I was aware of this, how opinionated and how strong the feelings are about certain opinions I have. How these opinions would bring forth very strong kind of emotions, where if somebody challenged these opinions, I could become quite ferocious. I'm like, these opinions were so strong, and emotions would rise up. I could become very heavy about it, almost telling people, this is the way it is, and you better believe me, and shut up, implying such kind of emotional state. So, if contemplating this feeling of having opinions, then I thought I shouldn't have any opinions. I should just be a milquetoast, kind of bland kind of being that I don't have any opinions at all. All religions are good. They're all equal. Each religion is just as good as the next religion. I wanted to be totally tolerant and without any kind of bias. So I just kind of lump it all together in a kind of maudlin lump of tasteless nothing. Everything is all right. All religions are equal. They're all good, all well-meaning. Kind of wimpy kind of tolerance. I listen to that kind of tendency to just want to be tolerant rather than biased. Then I say, what is the dhamma of this? Is there any dhamma in being in just tolerance or in being biased? And then one feels exasperated. Oh, anything is so confusing. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to think. I just want to find somebody to tell me what to think. Some teacher, some wise sage, some enlightened person, you tell me, and I'll believe you, because I don't want to figure it out. I just can't figure it out. I get confused every time I think about it. But then reflecting on santitiko akaliko ehipasko panayiko bhajatang dhamma, the immediacy of it is that all opinions, whether they're strong biases on the left or the right, or this bland kind of tolerance, kind of lumping it all together and refusing to form any opinion, and just the wanting somebody else to tell me, you tell me what's right and what's wrong. I began to see just the projections of my mind. They arise, they cease. Then that is seen a dhamma. There is this, seeing it as it is. Whether it's right or wrong, you know that at least it's impermanent, and right and wrong are not absolute, are they? It's not. Sometimes you realize there's a time for tolerance. Sometimes it's better to express maybe some form of extreme view. I mean, it's not a fixed view. It's not a position to take. But there are different ways of using our ability to speak and perceive things that are skillful means. But there's no fixed position to take. There's no condition that one, say, holds to as a position, as some way to interpret everything every experience in all time and in all places. Because then we become very rigid, frightened, narrow-minded, incapable of seeing or appreciating anything that doesn't quite fit into the very rigid view we hold. But everything then is dhamma. We transmute just the views, opinions, the self-views, the attachments, the loves, the hates, the fears, the desires, the whole range of conditioned experience, by putting it in its perspective of what is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. That's why in just yesterday when I was discussing the way we perceive each other, the names and the views we have about each other, we can believe those views as being the real person, or we can see those views as dhamma, they're perceptions we have that arise and cease in our mind. The perception I have of you is not really you, is it? It couldn't be. It is a perception in my mind. And I try to keep reminding myself of that, so that this is, it helps to keep me from creating unnecessary problems and being carried away by the emotions that arise in regards to when one really believes one's views and opinions, how strong one's feelings can get. When I was in the military, there was some very unpleasant experience, which I thought I was being treated very unfairly. And I was very embittered by that. I felt very resentful and angry and indignant. And I felt strong desires to kill the people, or at least to seek revenge. I had very strong feelings of wanting to take revenge on them. I used to have these fantasies about pursuing them in some kind of demonic way and torturing them till they cracked up and went crazy, had breakdown, because I was so angry and indignant. Every time the perception of these people came into my mind, I'd feel this incredible anger and rage rise up in my mind. And then these horrendous fantasies of seeking vengeance would come in. And even after years had passed, years went by, and it was pretty much dropped the subject, didn't really pursue it in any active form, and just let it go. But whenever those images, those perceptions of those people came through memory, I'd get these strong feelings again. Even after 20 years or so, I still could get just the perception of those several people would bring up this rage and this desire to get even with them. Of course, I'm not really a vengeful person. That kind of activity I don't think I've ever really followed, even though I've certainly felt it. That I know better than to act on it. But what was oftentimes surprising to me was how strong that emotion could be, even years later, just by thinking about those people, for very, very long, I'd suddenly feel just as enraged as I felt at the time. This kind of emotions were just so strong over this perception, and then seeing the dhamma of it began to reflect on the fact that it's only a perception, and when I indulge in that perception, then the result is I get caught up into this rage. This rage takes over. This strong feelings take over. But contemplating it, determining to look at it as dhamma rather than as self, then it began to take its proper place in my mind as a memory, as a perception, rather than being a real person who did me wrong. And so that way the kind of power of that perception was demolished, because the perception, when you see it as it is, it doesn't. The emotions don't arise, because you're no longer believing that the perception is somebody real. It's merely like a shadow, a phantom in the mind. No, that's not a dismissal either. It's not just saying it's only impermanent, and the attitude isn't one of it's only that, and a kind of dismissing of things, because it's like letting go, and all these means we use to investigate truth can end up just being ways of suppressing your feelings or dismissing things, and still coming from the self-view. Oh, don't be silly, it's just a perception in your mind, don't be such an idiot. Or just watch your mind, don't get caught up in your feelings, and kind of meaning I'm somebody who, you're still coming from the view of I'm somebody who's making a lot about nothing. And out of a molehill, that's me. So that is if you see the Dhamma of that, the view of yourself as being somebody who kind of makes a lot of problems about life. If you believe that, then you become someone who is that way all the time. You become someone who's always thinking, oh, I shouldn't really care about that, I should let that go and not carry that around. That was a long time ago. I shouldn't be someone who's really carrying this grudge, and just let go and don't be so stupid. Snap out of it. But it's still based on the wrong view, isn't it? I shouldn't feel this way, and I'm stupid for feeling this way. I should know better. That's still not Dhamma, is it? It's impermanent, anicca dukkha anatta, it's nothing. And it's dismissal, isn't it? It's just, I don't want to be bothered with this. I just kind of turn my head the other way and just not give it any attention. So that is why it's so important to really observe and know that sense of I am. Not to take the view you shouldn't have an ego, or you shouldn't think in terms of I am, or you shouldn't be selfish, because those are ideals But they aren't dhamma until we see that even the ideal is for what it is. The ideal is it may be a very good ideal. But ideals are also impermanent. The very thought of I should be a totally unselfish being is a thought that arises and ceases in the mind. So there's always this immediacy, the here and now. Come and see, look now, see it now, encouraging investigation. Dhamma is to be investigated, looked at. Examined. Now, in consciousness, the ability to be conscious is when we allow ourselves to be really conscious through mindfulness, wisdom, then there is the end of suffering. So that's why we allow subconscious or suppressed things that have been suppressed out of consciousness into consciousness in order to see it as the Dhamma rather than as self. So a lot of fear, for example, or bad memories, or anger, repressed anger, whatever, is then, say, in meditation, allowed into consciousness. But instead of interpreting it from the ignorant view of its mind, there is this direct witnessing of it as that which has arisen, and the willingness to accept it for what it is, and then it ceases. That what arises ceases. So that this is a liberation of the mind. It's a way of liberating and purifying the heart and mind. So if you're caught in ideals alone of how you should be, the kind of archetypes of human perfection, and then you suddenly feel angry or mean-hearted or jealous, some kind of inferior mental state arises, and then you feel hopeless because you're so inferior to the ideal that you have. The condition itself is so obviously inferior to the ideal that you're very attached to. You want to be really a non-selfish, loving person, and then you find yourself feeling really mean-hearted and selfish and uncaring about others. And that kind of mood arises, and you can only feel a sense of despair at what a kind of awful, horrible person you are, because you're so far removed from the ideal, isn't it? You're so inferior. The feeling of selfishness and mean-heartedness is so far removed from the ideal you may subscribe to. So you can only feel like a hopeless case. And that's all based on I am, the ideal itself. I should be like that, and then of course I shouldn't be feeling the way I do. Where when we see the Dhamma of this, then there is the ideal is not anything we're not. I'm not saying we shouldn't have ideals. But we know ideals are ideals. They're not self anymore. We know how to use ideals. Ideals are something that we cherish and something to respect, but not attach to, not identify with, not compare the flow of life always with the ideal, because then the perfectionist mind will only be caught up in feeling somehow frustrated continuously by the fact that everything seems to be wrong and nothing seems to be ideal. So in Dhamma, then, is the ideal. I should be an unselfish, loving person, giving myself to the society, serving the society in an unselfish way. It's a very beautiful ideal. And then suddenly something comes in up and you start feeling angry and petty and mean-hearted about something, and then you realize that also is impermanent. But it's not being compared with the ideal, but seen no longer taken from the view of me and mine, but as merely the way it is at this moment. This feeling of mean-heartedness is this way. It has arisen. You're allowing it to be conscious, and you're accepting it in consciousness. Feeling mean-hearted is like this, and then it ceases. And then consciousness is still there they're still conscious of it when it's there and when it's absent. So there's consciousness, conscious awareness of the presence of a condition and its absence. And so more and more you're aware of the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion. Because then you begin to understand how to live your life, how to live in a way that is not, you know directly, you realize non-greed, non-hatred, non-delusion. It's no longer an ideal about how you shouldn't feel greed, hatred, and delusion. And then when you do feel greed, hatred, you feel, oh, here I go again, here I'm being greedy and I shouldn't be. And that just is despairing, because there's no way out of that. It just goes in circles. You get confused by it, and you just get whirled around by that. So the Dhamma is apparent here and now. So that the high-minded ideal, the shoulds of life, what we all should be, what we should strive for, what we should aim at, what we should become, the lovely possibilities of human realization and experience are not to be dismissed as just a Nietzsche dukkha anatta and a kind of annihilation of ideals, but ideals are then dhammas that we can appreciate without being attached to. And then when the realities or the way things are in the moment, the nitty-gritty of life, the resultant karma, the feelings of anger and rage and despair and all that we may be feeling in the moment, are then seen as dhammas also, rather than as self. That's why with the sound of silence, it helps to kind of center one, bring one's attention to here and now. Because that's what I'm hearing right now. Neutral. It doesn't arouse any emotion whatsoever. Then the any kind of things that arise, conditions that come in consciousness, say, that are based on a self view, can be seen as what arises ceases. I used to have a practice years ago in Thailand where I'd sit and I'd contemplate the spaces between the monks, because the faces and the names of the monks gave such strong feelings. You know, I'd give such importance to the perception. This monk, that monk. This monk I like, that monk annoys me. That's a good monk. That's a serious monk. That's just one of those monks that ordains following a tradition, not very serious and probably disrobe. That monk over there, he has very annoying habits. Makes a lot of noise when he eats his food. The monk over there has a terrible skin rash that I find very repulsive. That monk over there, he doesn't bathe enough and stinks. But that monk sitting there, he's my friend. He and I have a special affinity with each other. We feel this kind of heart-to-heart sense. There's something, it must have been friends in previous lives or something. There's something electrifying there between us. But that monk, over there, what is that? Because the faces and forms and perceptions bring up these reactions. We can believe it all. We may give it so much importance, and we just go from one person to the next, and not ever see the space between these monks. Now, the space between people is not interesting at all. Not like a person, and where you have a face and they are attractive or not, or they have interesting features, or they're men and women, or they're young and old, or the kind of qualities that you can take an interest in. But space is not interesting. Our faces are very important, aren't we? We really identify so strongly with our face. If something happens to the face, it's really a scar or a rash, pimple, boil. It's a great tragedy, isn't it? So we lose it as we get older, because wrinkles and sagging flesh and that. It's not a bit of a shock to look in a mirror these days. See, the perception of yourself that you formed when you were young, and then what you're looking at, you're not seeing that perception, you're seeing something else. It's amazing, though, how you can put impose the perception on the wrinkles on the mirror. We've got incredible abilities to deceive ourselves. Mindfulness as the path to the deathless, then, is contemplate, it's consciousness. Don't take it for granted that you're really conscious. People are not very conscious, actually. They're caught up in all kinds of delusions that they're not really aware of very much. They tend to be so influenced by their fears and desires that the actual direct flow of life and the way things are is not noticed, not appreciated. A crazy person, someone that's mad, is living in a world totally projected, totally out of touch with dhamma. There's nothing. The world is such a kind of deluded projection that it has no relationship to the way anything really is. So that's why we bring ourselves back to the here and now. Santitiko, akaliko, ehipasiko, upanayiko, bhajatang, vaitidapo vinyuhi.